For 36.4, there's not a whole lot to talk about. It's just R and K theory. In reality, carrying capacity can change due to changing in the environment, because it's not only the size of the population itself that can change. Abiotic and other biotic factors can change, such as interspecific competition. Interspecific competition means competition between different species. So for example, the lion population could be the same, but the spotted hyena population could have changed in size, which would impact the carrying capacity potentially of the lions. Density-dependent and independent factors. Density-dependent factors. Limiting factors cause a population's per capita growth rate to change, typically to drop with increasing population density. One example is competition for limited food among members of the population. In other words, it limits the population, and the effect of that factor limits the population generally more the greater the population size is. Density-independent factors affect per capita growth rate independent of population density. Examples include natural disasters like forest fires. For example, the population of lions in the safari, they're probably, unless I'm not mistaken, not directly causing the forest fires. Okay, so whether there's a lot of lions or little lions, when the forest fire happens, it'll impact, at least for some time, the carrying capacity of lions that can be supported in that area, but it wasn't the amount of lions present that determined whether the fire would occur. So that's independent of density. And so this is a nice graph showing, for example, with worms, the less worms there are, the more eggs per female in those worms. And so the fecundity is decreasing with population density. In other words, the number of individuals per female is decreasing with population density. Here's a wildfire. Wildfire, right? It's not, if we look at butterflies in a forest, yeah, the butterfly population will be affected by a wildfire, but it's not the butterflies causing the wildfire. At least I don't think so. Let's take a minute to read this question and then determine your answer, and we can vote. So hopefully you had a minute to read this question, and you should find the answer is C, because as the population density is large, disease will spread more quickly. Hey, we have an example, COVID, right? Disease spreads quickly in a dense population. Okay. K-selected and R-selected species. K-selected species are species which exist close to carrying capacity with high intraspecific competition. They have few offspring which are given longer-term care, and offspring are not independent at birth. R-selected species have a large number of small offspring and do not give longer-term parental care, and offspring are relatively mature and independent at birth. We kind of talked about this before with the elephants and the flies, and those are some of the examples listed. You can see these factors here, right? K has less offspring, they mature later, more energy per offspring. R, mature early, many offspring, low energy per offspring. And so here are some examples of A-selected species. You might think, how is that tree A-selected? Well, if the individual seeds are large, there's more energy per seed, okay? So relative to a weed, like a dandelion, that tree, is it an acorn, an oak tree? Those seeds are large compared to a dandelion. So relative to a dandelion, it would be K-selected because there's a lot of energy per seed, whereas for the dandelion, it's less energy per seed as a source of comparison, okay? And so this idea of K-selected and R-selected is just a nice theory to help to think about the strategies of survival and reproduction that different species have. And that is it for 36.4, and we skip 36.5, and we'll go next to 36.6.